We could get started. Um, for those of you watching, this is a live version of my podcast called Between Authors, where basically I interview other indie authors that are out there, trying to introduce them to new viewers, trying to get their works out there for others to find them. Today we're going to be talking with indie author Ted. He's actually been on the podcast before, probably about a year ago, right, Ted? Year and a half or so ago. But I wanted to bring him back on so we could talk about what he's writing now and what he has going on. And for those again that don't know, this live version will be downloaded and then I'll load it up on my YouTube podcast so you can go back and watch any parts you missed, or if you weren't able to tune in today, you can definitely catch that later. So thank you for joining, Ted. I know again it's difficult because you're in Greece and it's 3 in the morning right now for you, but I appreciate you, hopping on so we can do this. Why don't you introduce yourself to everybody who's watching? Give them a brief rundown of who you are as an author and anything else you'd like to share.
Sure. First of all, I'd like to thank you, Adrian, for having me in your broadcast. I appreciate it very much. I'm Ted Kostis. I live in Greece. I live in Athens, Greece. I write spy fiction, military sci-fi, space opera. This is the main line. In a year ago, we've talked about a Ganasa incident, which I wrote under my name, which was a straightforward action adventure in the stars. It was the first part of a series which I did not complete up to now. What I've decided to do is start a new line under a pen name, which is Tex Kasnovas. And this line deals with a little bit more dark themes of, again, spy-fi, space opera, the same base, but more politically delving matters and espionage themes and all of that. Much more to the point. So anytime you wish, you can stop and ask me whatever you want, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
I just wanted you to introduce so they have a feeling of what you write, in case they haven't, seen your work before, or if
mhm,
maybe they don't follow you currently. So when,
mhm.
this new pen name that you're writing under, when did you start that? Is that something recently this year or something more last year?
No, I think I may have started this a couple of years ago, and today maybe I'll talk about the major project that has
Okay.
spawned out of this one, which is Tinker Tailor Soldier Serpent. It's obvious that it deals with a theme very close to Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy by Le Carre, which I admire very much as an author. I
Okay.
admire Le Carre and Ian Fleming very much, and I've read them extensively, so I can get their style and how they write, because movies are different from novels,
Yes.
and we expect to go into a reader audience. Although I think that my writing is a little bit cinematic sometimes. So there is a galactic empire that has a peculiar government system, which is a stratocracy plus democracy, and they have a referendum in about a week. Either they will keep that regime, the hybrid regime, or they will go only stratocracy, or they'll go only democracy. And as you understand, um, other galactic empires are going into this game, and they're trying to influence the result because in the democracy section they have put them all, and they try to influence all that. And I have written up to now 3 parts of this saga, which I have made some notes here, so it's going to be easier. So we have
Okay.
in the first part we have our main protagonist, which is Rex Dodgers, and he's an intelligence agent of this galactic empire, and he's being framed. He's being framed for murder and treason, and he's being framed for the murder of adversary intelligence agents who wanted to give him a data stick with information. So he's framed that he killed her and he delivered this stick to an enemy agent. And the proof of that is via a video that Rex Dodgers says that it's a deep fake. And we see today that deep fakes, especially with Google VO3, I mean, VO2 was good, but VO3, you must have seen the results here on TikTok, for example. Google VO3 makes videos that are absolutely impossible not to take them as real,
They're
right?
hard. I mean, it's hard to separate now.
Hard to separate, right? And I've written that, a couple of years ago, and then suddenly, as I say, science fiction is a technology that in the future is going to be valid, right?
Yeah.
So the dream of today, is going to be the reality of tomorrow. That's science fiction. We dream today, and then tomorrow it's real. And so what's happening is that they arrest this Red Dodgers guy, and they want to kill him because the data stick may have had inside something much more sinister. So they want to kill him, but at the last moment they arrest him and they try to take him to prison. But on the way there are only 2 guards, so Rex Dodgers thinks that they may want to get rid of him on the way. It's only 2 guys for all this thing is really peculiar for him, so he feels uneasy. But there's a strange lady who frees him. That's on the first part of the book, and which is now on Amazon and Draft Digital. And there's a lady who frees him, and she claims later that she's the sister of that intelligence agent that he was framed for murder. So that's the first part, and
Okay. Let
sets up.
me let me ask you a question, Ted. Real quick though. Thank you for stopping in, Rochelle. Um, you mentioned the 3 parts, right? Is that 3 parts of book one? And if it's book one, do you plan on this being multiple books, or do you plan on this being maybe a world you build out into not only say this series, but other maybe spin-offs or other books that you're going to write?
Um, I'll tell you how it's happening and how I saw it up to now. I wrote the first part, but of course it can be made, it can be extended, right? But right now it has all the rights. It has all the right
Yeah.
stuff,
Yeah.
and I think it's about 100 or 120 pages, and it's being priced. The ebook is priced for $1. So if somebody gets from Amazon, author gets something like 30 pence. So it's really an introductory price
Yeah.
for people to say, I don't want to risk a lot. Can I read
Yeah.
this guy? You can. And the second part, which is around 120 pages as well, is again $1, right? So somebody can risk very little. Now, the last part, every last part is about $3. So the third part is $3. So, um, as I see it, now I'll answer your question. Uh, for the fourth book, I had a different line to complete it. And there was one event that was happening that I was going to mention it in 2 or 3 sentences. Now, can you believe that? 2 or 3 sentences. And then I looked at it again and I said, oh my God, this makes a whole book. So up to now, I'm 176 pages out of these 3 sentences.
It
Right?
happens, right? It just builds on its own.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's the beauty of indie publishing.
Yes.
That it's not. Although I said about pricing and all of that, it's not about you write something and then you try to find a publisher so they can give you money up front or blah blah blah, and the publisher can change things because they don't like it because they have paid for it. They feel like they have paid for it, or
Yeah.
they
You
feel
lose a
like
lot of control on it.
yeah, they have a lot of control, and of course, they expect it to be profitable, right? We also write,
We don't,
yeah. I mean,
right?
no, listen, we want our work to be appreciated
Yeah.
financially because because time and money, unfortunately or fortunately, is the same. So the time that we put in, if it's appreciated, and if it's appreciated by many people, it's very good because it
Yeah.
means that you have made something good, and you have entertained because people want to be in this. This is why people buy us, right?
Yeah.
This is why
I
people
mean,
buy
that's
your book.
really, Ted. That's why you, I, and all the other indie authors do it. We do it because we love it, and we really hope other people love it, right, and enjoy what we write. Because really, whatever we do make on it, we appreciate it. But all of us have other our normal jobs because we know we're not making enough. We're making it just enough to cover artwork or cover editing or cover all the little things that we have to do. Outside of that, really, probably not much more than that. But we do it because we love it, right? We absolutely love writing. We love getting stories out there, and we appreciate when people love them, right? When they read them and actually love what we're writing, and that's where we become, or we feel like we're successful in that side, right? Because we have, like you said, entertain people. Because really, that's what this is, for somebody to have enjoy the time they're reading it, and just sit there and hopefully take their mind off of other things and just enjoy the story as they go through.
Yeah, yes, of course. I mean, this is why this. I mean, this is. I believe both of us. This is because I agree with what you said. So this is for us a very good thing. I mean, even if I have one sale in 1 month, right? I'm very glad because I feel that somebody has appreciated what I've written,
Yeah, what you put
um,
into it.
what you put into it. Yeah, this is. Would you like me to tell you about the second book? What the second
Yeah,
part?
but let's do this. But let's before we do that, let's you talked a little bit about it. It's very similar to espionage, like similar, like you mentioned, James Bond type of stuff. It's
Mhm.
also space fantasy on that side, and I think if I remember right, because it's been a while since we talked last. If I remember right, there's a lot of old sci-fi programs that kind of influenced you, or programs that you really appreciate. A lot of the older ones. If I remember correctly, Space 1999, I think we talked about, which I always loved, and a lot of people just don't know or never saw. The some of the old Battlestar Galacticas, or even some of the newer ones, in that kind of mold. Why don't you give everybody an idea? Maybe not necessarily using those, but give them an idea of your stories, kind of what that mold is, or what that stylized type of writing is in your stories.
Sure, and thank you very much for this was a very nice reminder. Space 1999 was a very nice show. On the
Yeah.
first, it had two cycles, and on the first cycle it was very sci-fi. On the second cycle, it was influenced by the US producers, and it was more like action
Yeah.
oriented show for to try to get more viewers. But there was one good thing about Space 1999. That was a very hard sci-fi. It was based on, it was trying to be as real as possible. So
Hmm.
it was able to give you that space dread, that space fear, that space exploration, that space uh, terror, havoc.
Yeah.
It was able to get you all these
It was
feelings.
it was a great show. I mean, I really love that show. And again, it's there's probably very few people that remember it or even know what the show is about or know what we're talking about. And if I remember correctly, um, the poor show was it looked like they had like $50 budget to do everything, but they did such an amazing job with what they did. It was a great sci-fi, TV show that just kept you entertained. And like you said, it leaned a little heavier on actual science, sometimes or stuff that was, you know, actually could be happening or was possible rather than really stuff that you had to imagine was possible. And it was a great show. I mean, I appreciated it. I think it was late 70s or early 80s, right?
It, it must have been late 70s because
Yeah, if I
I
remember
remember,
correctly.
yeah,
Yeah.
late 70s. It's, I mean, you can still find it. And it's an amazing show. I've I watch it frequently. I even listen to the music sometimes. You know, I just have
Yeah,
it
I
on
mean,
my.
what's very interesting about it is if again, and it's been such a long time, I haven't watched them in years, maybe decades. But um, if I remember correctly, what was very interesting about it is it was very different from a lot of the other sci-fi stuff at the time, which was a little more campy, a little more, you know, I would say family oriented. Like you said, there's a little more darker sci-fi in Space in 1999. There wasn't like, when they did, if I remember right, the original Battlestar Galactica that had the little robot dog that, they just wanted to kind of have some fun scenes playing around, little things like that. That one kind of stayed away from that, right? That was just, we're going to give you dark sci-fi and just give you stories that were, like you said, the fear, the terror, the unknown, the things that are going on. And that's what I appreciated. It was just, it came with a completely different, you know, direction than everything else that was happening at the time. And I always appreciated that you love that as well. And it gives me kind of an idea of probably where your stories are coming from.
Yeah, definitely. I'm influenced by Galactica very much,
Hmm.
and it shows in this Tinker Tailor series. It shows that there's a lot of Galactica going on, and Space 1999 is very nice. And also, may I add something? Space 1999 solved one big problem that's on any sci-fi, the gravity in space. Because, for example, in Galactica, you have gravity in the spaceship, but that's not possible because they are in space. And in all other movies, in Alien and all of that, in the big Nostromo spaceship, they have gravity. What do you think? Am I right or wrong?
No, you're right. You're right. I mean, it's all very consistent on all the other ones, right?
Yeah.
When you're
So
watching Star Trek, any of them, there's no problem
yeah,
inside the ship, right? Everybody's walking around doing whatever they need.
yeah. I mean, there should be gravity in there. So Space 1999 was solving the gravity problem because they were on the moon. And the moon has, how much? 30% gravity? I mean, I don't remember now.
Yeah, I
Uh,
don't know the percentage.
but you can still walk. I mean, you can still walk on there. Now, you're going to ask me, how can you solve this problem on having a spaceship in space and have 1G gravity? Um, I thought about it and I mention it in my books, and I say that there is a special material which has very high density in very little volume, so you can have a layer of it on the bottom of a spaceship, and this creates the not artificial gravity, which is a rotating ring,
Yeah,
but creates actual real gravity because it grabs you down. So this is soft sci-fi,
yeah,
right? Because in order to be able to have such a material with such high density and such a low volume, it's an exotic, impossible material up to what physics has shown us, up to now that can exist.
yeah,
And as you see, I'm not saying that it doesn't exist because this is why we write, because we refuse to accept that things that we imagine cannot exist. Am I right or wrong?
hmm you're
Yeah.
right. You're right. And then, again,
So
see, that's the beauty of this, and why I appreciate you, knowing Space 1999 and liking Space 1999 is because you watched that and appreciated it. You found a way to try to explain why there's some gravity on the spaceship where every other space story, book, movie, whatever, everybody automatically assumes you're good inside the ship, right? There's no problem. Everybody's walking around. It's never really explained. It's just like, we're good. As long as we're inside the ship, we're good. And because of your love of Space 99, because they were trying to explain these things and say, look, realistically, this is kind of what has to happen for this to work. You did the same. You said, look, I got to give you some kind of explanation, right? Because technically, I kind of know in my heart it's not going to work. And I just don't want you to assume. So I want at least you to have a reason why everybody's walking around in this. And that's the beauty of it, right? That's the beauty of things that influence us as authors, as writers, things we loved as children, whether it's something we read or movies or programs we watched. That's the beauty of that, especially for an indie authors, because you can take that and kind of run with it and form your style, right? And I appreciate that you did that for that reason, from Space in 1999.
yeah, I called it gravitium. uh, and you see, when you watch all these movies and all these shows and you read all these books, you find that there are some things that you can add or you can explain, if I dare say better, or you can explain in a more comedic style. You know,
Hmm.
it's all of that. It's this is I think this is the fun of it,
Yeah,
to try
I mean,
and
it's the beauty of being the indie author, and like we said, because when you do find a publishing house or you do go that route, you do lose a lot of that control, right? And it's kind of I'm a huge I love sci-fi as well, but I'm a huge horror fan, right? So everything horror, movies, TV shows, whatever, I absolutely love. And when you love all that sci-fi, horror, a lot of times as you're going through, you're watching stuff and you have questions. You're like, why don't they explain this? Or why didn't this happen? Or why does this always happen? It doesn't have to be always this way. And you can fix that as an indie author. You could say, I'm going to explain why this happened, or I'm going to avoid this situation, right? And not have to go that route. I mean, a good example is when you think of horror, it's always like the dad died or something happened and the mom moves with the kids to some haunted house or just some horrible place where everything's going to go bad, and they use that too much as just like a template for the movie doesn't have to be, right? You could change the structure. It doesn't always have to be the same. And that's the beauty. We can take it any way we want, right? We could say, I'm not going to do it that way. I'm going to completely switch it up and change what you expect so you don't really know where it's going to go.
I mean, yeah, sure. And you brought up a very characteristic example of the horror theme. Correct me if I'm wrong. The haunted house and the will to enter it, right? So I think I remember at least two versions. One version is people enter it because they don't believe that ghosts exist. They just bought the place
Hmm.
and they just walk in and say nothing like this exists, but it exists. Or you have usually my versions, which I used in the first book, a haunted spaceship, and they have to enter it because they have to find out what happened. Because in that haunted spaceship, in the Ganasa incident that we talked a couple of years ago, they entered it because there were 5,000 crew inside there, and there are rumors that something destroyed them, that there was a monster inside, and something destroyed them, and only 5 people survived, and they went to an outpost and said, we really left before the monster got to us, and we don't know what the monster is. So
Yeah.
they enter it to find out exactly what was happening.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so either
You're correct, Ivy, on that. Ivy at the in the comments mentioned that the other thing for a haunted house is sometimes it's given to you. You inherit it. You go to move into it, not
yeah,
knowing, right? You don't know or didn't know anything was to not believe, or there wasn't really a reason to go other than somebody gave you a free house and you're like, this is an amazing house, not knowing it's it's just gonna go bad for the first night on.
the way I would write it, because I think horror and comedy are siblings.
Hmm.
They both induce this certain feeling, which is based on surprise, and this is why they are siblings. So I would probably write like I wrote it in the Ganasa incident. I wrote a horror comedy that the protagonist goes in this haunted spaceship, but there are some hilarious things happening. Uh, although they seem terrifying, they have a laugh at the end. Um, this is my style.
And it's a good way to keep the reader off balance, right? Because you don't know which direction it's going to go, right? It could go either way, and it's a good way to really keep that not only the attention of drawing them in, but just keeping them going with the story because you really don't know, right? You don't know, like if it's just straight horror and just dark and heavy, you kind of know that atmosphere, right? It's just going to keep hitting you and hitting you. But when you're switching it up and throwing a little bit of comedy, you have no idea what's coming up, right? You have no idea where it's going to go.
You're absolutely right, but I should admit that I'm very very scared. If I would write just horror, I would be scared out of my pants. So I'm appealing to readers that do not want to be uh, always on the edge. And but I believe that writing horror that is always on the edge has extreme merits, and and is the main theme, and contains the most basic tropes. This is true.
Yeah.
I think. I am writing something like a hybrid escape valve, if you may say that,
Yeah.
because I cannot be scared too much. I can't take it. In my life, I may have seen a couple of horror movies, and that's all. I may have seen The Omen,
Hmm.
uh, with the Antichrist and all of that. Can you
Yep.
guess how many times? Can you guess how many times I've seen this movie? Only
Once.
one.
Yeah.
I saw it. I remember it. Thank you very much. Won't see it again.
Yep. But
Yeah.
it's a good point you bring that up because really for the reader, right? The biggest thing is the connection to the story. And I always feel that as an author, if you don't feel the story, right? And like you said, you can't take it where it's full horror because for you, you're like, I'm not even going to go that direction. That feeling that you're as you're writing and saying, okay, I need to lighten this section for me, right? As I'm going through this, the reader's going to connect to that. They're going to feel the same way, right? When you're feeling that as you're writing it, the reader's going to feel it as they read it, right? And it's that general connection that makes them love your story, enjoy your story, because they feel that through your writing, right? And that's the beauty again of that, and writing in your voice how you feel, right? If you don't really like horror, but you force yourself to write it, right, and not lighting it up, then it's not really going to come off the same way because that's not really you, right? So the fact that you do that for you as you're writing it, that reader is going to feel that connection to it, and just make it that much better for them.
Yeah, I mean that's true. As I said, the main theme, as I believe, is to write a pure horror. It gives a completely true feeling. How should I place it? Readers expect to be scared, and to have a climax which is in that line.
Hmm.
I offer a horror comedy. I mean, even in Amazon, if somebody sees the classification of Ghana, says that it says horror comedy because it tries to get this escape valve, and maybe it's like we say that we write books that we would like to read.
Hmm.
So I cannot I cannot read a full horror uh, movie or book. I want some escape valve, and I want to laugh a little bit.
Yeah.
Uh, and I'll give you an example. Let's say that the protagonist. This is in a Ghana's incident. This is inside. The protagonist is being hunted, and then he sees 4 or 5 people sitting on the floor, scared to their wits. They're extremely scared, and he asks them, "Excuse me, what are you?" And they all say, "We are all serial killers, all 5 of them." And he says, "You're serial killers?" They say, "Yes." And why are you looking so scared? Because the real monster is gonna come in a second. And he says, "Who is the real monster?" "The taxman."
That is the scariest one when they come, right?
You know, I mean, this is a style. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe some viewers, either here or either in the YouTube later on, they will say, "Yes, okay, I understand horror. It's very good." And okay, to tell you the truth, I have read some horror books because I want to know the style. Uh, one doesn't pop into my mind right now, but the stories pop.
Yeah.
So I know how it is. Um, but I wanted, this escape valve, the funnier side of that.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
style.
I
So
mean, if horror is not something that you really enjoy, right? The best thing probably is kind of what you're doing, but just write what you think would scare you as it, because again, the readers for your voice and your books are going to understand it, right? They're going to be right there with you because, like you said, we write stuff we would want to read or stories that we would want to, be interested in. There's the audience for that, right? So if you're writing it to a point where you would feel scared with it, then that's all the horror you need, right? That's taking you right where you need to go. And horror really is very, it's a very individual sensation or emotion, right? Because some things are scary to some which aren't to others, and some which don't seem like they're that big may just completely terrify somebody else. So since it's such a very individual emotion, it's better just to roll with what you would feel would be scary at that time, and it would be perfect, right? Horror, I would think, is one of the main things where the reader's imagination is always going to be better than anything any of us could write, right? Whether it's a description or a scene, you give them just enough to set it up, but that reader, their imagination is always going to be so much better than anything we could do, simply for the fact is they know what terrifies them, right? And they know when you give them just enough to set it up, they're going to put in their mind what's even worse than what you could have put down. And I always call it back because, again, I love old horror, right? I love the old Universal classics. And when you think about a lot of those, they didn't give you a lot of description. They didn't really show you a lot of stuff. A lot of it was just imagine, right? You imagine what was going on. You imagine what the horror was behind the door, or when you heard the scream, what was happening. And that's really the beauty of that, because you, as a viewer or reader, you're just going to make it worse than it could have been.
Yeah, I'm sure characteristic, very nice examples are your works. I think you deal with subjects like this,
Yeah, I
correct?
do a lot. I do a lot of horror, but I do a mix, right? Because again, I really love the classics, right? I love a lot of the older classics. So I have a lot of gore sometimes in my books, but I don't overdo it. I give you enough to
Mhm.
know how horrific that scene was, or how painful that instance is happening to that person or whatever. But I don't over, so I don't do like extreme graphic horror. I give you enough to feel it and to know. I give you enough of the atmosphere to kind of feel it,
Atmosphere.
because I appreciate, again, the older stuff, right? I appreciate that, rather than just feeding you everything and then you're just kind of reading through it. I want you to kind of fill in some of the gaps of that.
Yes, of course. I was thinking the same thing about your work. I've seen some of your work. It's fantastic. And
Thank you.
I had this exact word in my mind. That's why I'm sorry if I interrupted you, because
No,
it's
no.
very atmospheric. It's very nice work. I mean, I'm the guy who would write a 400-page book of a vampire hunting a person, right? 400 pages hunting a person with complete fear and, all this chase and all of that. And then suddenly, when the vampire got to this person said, "Okay, I give up. You got me." And the vampire was going to ask him, "Are you a dentist? Because I have a tooth problem."
Yeah.
You
You
know,
know, it reminds me of, it's like a lot of the old Leslie Nielsen movies when he did, I think it was Dracula Dead and Loving It, right? Which is just all comedy on that side.
I
It's
love
really
this
on that
movie.
sget right? Yeah.
I love this
You,
movie.
you
I
get
see
you
this
get
movie
the
10 times a
the
day.
horror set up, and then it's just comedy coming at you.
Yeah, I see it 20 times a day. I see it 20
Yeah.
times a day. You know, the guy's in bed with two vampires, right? Two female vampires.
Hmm.
They approach him, and he's in the bed, and they go in the bed with him, and he says, "This is wrong. This is wrong." And then after a second, he says, "Wrong, my brains out." It's I love this thing. This is my style. I love this
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
The have the horror element and then turn it into a comedic situation that you laugh until tomorrow never comes.
Yeah, I mean, when every time, even last time when we were talking about this, it's those things that always remind me of kind of what you're doing. Those are the things that come in my head when you talk about, taking the comedic part of it and going into like a horror scene. It's exactly what hits my head was movies like that.
Yeah, I love this. This is my style. have a 400-page book of a vampire hunting somebody to ask him if he's a dentist. This is the style, which of course subverts and because they, as we said, it's all in the surprise thing, and that's
Yeah.
why slasher movies are in the horror gene, in the horror drop, because they give you surprise, the monster or the killer or everybody like that comes out, just
Yep.
in seconds. Yeah, I mean, the uh,
So
let me know
so
what.
let's I know we got off track a little because again I always appreciate talking the old
I
sci-fi
love,
and stuff with you on that side. I think we did
I
it
love,
last time too. We got sidetracked, but let's
I
get
love it.
back. Let's talk a little bit more about book two on
Okay,
your thing because we kind of got off of that for a second.
okay. No, it's not a problem. I can talk with you about all these things. I enjoyed so much, and I'm gonna talk a little bit, and then try to find a way to get back on this discussion. Now, on the second book, which is this is available as well. On the second book, the protagonist Rex Dodgers wants to find a special mask so he can infiltrate a casino. The whole thing is that this guy has been framed, but they trace the hacker that created that deepfake video. So they want to follow the money chain. And then in the first book, they find the hacker dead, but they find who paid him. And it was a banker. So they go after the banker, and they find the next link and they go after the casino owner, but they need a special mask to go on the casino owner. But this guy betrays, which betrayal is a major trope in espionage. This guy that has a mask betrays Dodgers and has him hostage. His hands are tied behind his back, and he has him hostage in a basement.
Hmm.
And could you imagine any way that this guy could escape? I mean, we're talking about tied to the chair as tight as possible. And this guy is proven to be a serial killer and also a member of a cult that has paid him to destroy Dodger. So he says, I may be paid for that, but I'll do it out of fun. Is there any way that Dodgers can escape? There's no way he can escape. But of course, we have the espionage trope, which includes a lot of gadgets. So Dodgers has gadgets and wins, kills this guy. Of course, he's in a basement, and this basement could be booby trapped. So he
Hmm.
finds a way to destroy the booby traps and go up and leave. That's basically the second book. And the third book is a little bit, it's 90% high concept and 10% cult. Now, of course, I'll just say it, for anybody else. The high concept is when you are very close to the theme that you're writing. When you write espionage, you don't expect to have deities and magic and paranormal phenomena and all of that. It's not the main. It's not the main line. So
Hmm.
high concept is the main line. I've decided to include 10% cult. A battle of deities in the third book, which we have Dodgers being stranded in the lurid, grim labyrinth, which is a dystopian, devastated place that has the Lord of Zillow's Prime, which is very close to Escape from New York, Carpenter.
Okay.
Uh,
Another great
and
movie.
another great movie, and it also has elements of The Running Man, which they place bets on either. So they place bets on either they put dodgers inside the lurid grim labyrinth and they hunt him, and they put bets on either he will survive or how long it will take to kill him or something like that. So he has tropes from, as I said, Escape from New York and The Running Man. And of course, as I said, he has this 10% of the battle. He has two deities, and that's where the third book stops. And now I've written. I'll say the book so we can talk generally after that. And we have the fourth book is the rigged Gabbit, which in order to influence the referendum on planet Lonaris, they have an influx of illegal immigrants. So the Ghost Federation tries to blockade them and see what will happen, what is going to happen. But that is just the cherry on the cake, because there's a big cake under that, which includes space battle and politics and all of that. That's the fourth book. I'm 176 pages. It's the longest one. I have found a lot of things that you can write on that. And the good thing I believe about sci-fi is that you can make political commentaries without referring to real situations, so you can have big backlashes.
Hmm.
What do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, you can. That's a lot of times the old sci-fi, old espionage, any of those things allows you to put some of that backstory in there, and it doesn't have to be mirroring anything specific. But a lot of times, as we all know, a lot of situations are mirrors from situations in the past that are just happening again. So it gives you that avenue to kind of be able to do that, right?
Yeah,
I do want to make sure everybody that, again, that's watching, we touched a little bit on it earlier, but book one and book two, I believe you said, are on the ebook version is for $1, correct, right
yeah,
now? And book
yeah,
three, I think, is for $3.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. So
It's
after when I do post this on the YouTube channel, I will put the links down there for everybody to be able to find them, to go
I'll
back and
send
get
it.
them. And
I'll
again, for those that have missed it earlier, the his series is a mixture of, if you think of espionage like James Bond type of story, and then you think of sci-fi similar to Battlestar Galactica, for us, Space 1999. But if you're younger, probably don't know what that is. But it's a mixture. It's a mixture of that kind of gives you an idea where his stuff is and how it's kind of written. But definitely go check them out. They're good prices right now in the ebook versions. You can pick them up and check out Ted's writing on that side. Um, so I know you're writing book four right now, and it was interesting because you mentioned earlier book four, which right now is 176 pages, basically started out, you said, with 3 lines of writing, right? So 3 simple sentences, and you said, "Oh no, I'm at 176 pages now." And for those that do write, understand that, because that's sometimes what happens. And for those that don't, it sometimes just grows on its own, right? You can't have a single sentence, a single title, a single phrase, and it just take off from there. And you just keep going with it, right? You just keep rolling with whatever started, and just let it flow.
Yeah, I estimate that this is going to be at least 300 pages when it finishes. It's
It was 100 pages for each line that you wrote
yeah, 100
originally.
pages per line. You know, I think what is happening is that, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but as we write, there are certain subplots that
Yeah.
come up, and some of these subplots can stay and support the main line, but some of these subplots are so nice to be expanded
Hmm.
and commended and used and influence the whole thing. So they just have to be written in all their glory.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I don't know if you feel the same way, but it's interesting that when you're writing, right, when you're writing a story or your book, I always feel it's very similar to normal life, right? And what I mean is, in normal life, you would meet somebody you've never met before, you go to somewhere, a place you've never visited, and all those little small interactions can become bigger in your life, right? That person you meet maybe becomes a better friend or somebody you talk to a lot more. That place you visit for the first time may become one of your favorites, and you find yourself going in that direction a lot more, right? And I think it's very interesting when you're writing a story, that happens to the characters in the story, and the story does that as well. You may not plan that, right? You're writing and you just happen to say, "Oh, I need a character here to interact with and just say something." And then as you're writing it, the dialogue gets a little bigger, the interactions get a little bigger. Before you know it, you're like, "You know what? Later on, I need to have that character come back for something to come around and either close something out, or something is still kind of left there." Same thing with a place in your story. There's little things that need to be sometimes expanded on. They don't have to be, but sometimes as you're writing, it keeps hitting your head, and you're like, "I need to go back to this part and go deeper into it." And that's the beauty, because again, you just let it flow, right? You just let the story sometimes takes you where it wants to go rather than you taking the story, right? And that's the interesting, and the thing I love about it is sometimes we don't even know where the story's going. We're kind of reading it for the first time as we're writing it out, because we don't even know where it's going to go, right? I don't know about you. I don't ever really outline any of my stuff. I like to just go with it and let it go where it wants. And I think that I always have more fun that way when I don't pre-plan anything, right? I just kind of let the story go.
Um, I'm in somewhere in between that. I
Yeah.
what I do is that, and I'm sure you may be doing this yourself. We may be doing the same thing. What I do is that I pre-plot some stuff just to
Uh
get a
huh.
basic idea, and then as I start to write and as I start to think about it, this basic plot changes. I just simply have I must have a premise, I must have what I usually do is that I have a start and somewhere in the middle, because as I have seen, what I have thought in the beginning that would be the end, it cannot be.
It's not, right?
You gotta have the twist. You must have the twist. I
Yeah.
I have forgotten to put the twist, or I said, look, I'm gonna do this right now. I'm gonna do the basic thing, and I'm gonna think about the twist later on. And I mean, it's all in the for example, in the books that we read about how to write, and looking at the beats and looking at how it's gonna be and all of that. I do not follow a specific, uh, line of what's inside these books. Save the cat and all of that. I don't follow it to the letter. But what I do is that I say you gotta have a conflict. If you have a story, you gotta have a conflict, and it's good to have a twist.
Yeah.
So I think I cannot plot the whole story from the start. It's impossible for me.
No. I
But
mean, I don't know if I'm right, but I've always felt that when you do that, right, when you plot it and try to stick to it, and I've said this before, people are going to say, "Oh, he's repeating this before again," but I've always felt that's where writer's block comes, because you're trying to force it, right? You're trying to
yeah,
force that outline that you wrote, and again, everything's organic. It's changing as you're writing it, so you can have plotted. say chapter 1 to chapter 10 and expect chapter 10 to be exactly where you wanted it again, right from when you originally thought, because all those chapters have changed that path is not the same anymore when you get there.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I said, that I believe that we're doing the same thing, just have a basic, thought.
Yeah.
What's
I
what
actually, actually, I probably do everything the complete wrong way to do the stuff, because a lot of times I will write a scene, right? That scene could be chapter 15, but the scene was so strong in my head, I was like, I need to write this, right? So I'll write that, maybe that entire chapter, that scene. And then as I'm thinking about that, I go, okay, it reminds me of something else, a scene I like that could be all the way back at chapter 3. So a lot of times I may not even write chronologically. I'm kind of back and forth in terms of in my head what I think's coming, because technically for me, it always feels like the story's already in my head, right? It's there as a whole, and I'm just kind of pulling it out. And where you talk about the twists and stuff like that, generally that happens as I'm writing it, because I know what's happening in, say, chapter 15, and I know kind of where I'm at, say, in chapter 4 or 5. And sometimes I had to go, okay, I did this to myself. What has to happen to get me to here? Because I've already done this later in the book. So something has to happen in here to get there. And that's a lot of times where the twists may come, where something that completely surprises you that you don't expect, that's not just necessarily a twist, but something that just completely comes out of left field. Because I in my head, I was like, I know this has to happen, and I know where I started. Okay, how do I get myself to that? And then that's kind of the part I really love, is that I have to figure that out, almost like crime solving. How do I get myself from this point to this point, and keep it in that story, right? So you're not writing three different stories and putting it together. It's one cohesive story. And for me, that's always been the fun of it, right? That's the part I enjoy, or that I love, is that having to figure that out, right? That little bit of detective work of, I kind of put myself maybe a little bit of a corner over here. How do I get myself to there?
Yes, I believe I do the same. It's this is how you can write organically and healthy. How should I put it? There's no other
Yeah.
way. I mean, I have my biggest aspiration would be to have the chapters in the desktop publishing system, the chapters to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the file names. If you see the final book, it's 6, 7, 3, 8, 9 first,
it's kind
because
it's kind of like the Star Wars series, right? You're like at 4, 5, 6, then you go 1, 2, 3, and you go 7, 8, 9.
you cannot, because as you organically tell the story, you see that whatever you thought was going to be 3, now it's 9, and
Yeah.
what was 10 is now 1. But you cannot change all the numbers because of that, because you may have another change as well. So uh, what you say is correct. There's no way to write a different thing. Of course, the final product does not have such inconsistencies, because
You
file
would
name
hope, right?
10,
But yeah, no, it never
you
does.
rename it 1, right? But it's file name 10. If you The good thing of the desktop publishing system is that it has the page numbers. So
Yeah.
after a while, you go by page numbers. You don't go by file names that you thought that was going to be 1, 2, 3, and you just look at the page numbers to be able to get it in.
Yeah,
Uh,
I mean, it's probably not the best advice to give to somebody that's starting to write, but I would say it's the most fun, right? It really is the most fun to not write chronologically, because you really don't know what's happening, right? You really don't know where that story is going to go. And for a writer, I think that's the most fun, because it's like a reader reading that book for the first time. You don't know where everything's going, right? It's really
yeah,
the same for us as we're writing it. We don't we
yeah,
don't know where it's going either, because we're letting it kind of flow as we're doing it.
Yeah, I mean, you are trying to be a very demanding reader of your work.
Yeah.
You're trying to please the first reader that will read it yourself. So it's impossible not to make the necessary changes to make the story better.
Yep.
It's impossible. The and now we're talking. Now we talked about a little bit of technical stuff. Um, I have seen, because I write space opera, and I have quite some characters which may belong to different books, or you may have 10 or 12 characters in a book. So, and you have places, and you have names of galactic empires, you have names of ships, you have designations of ships. So you
Yeah.
have a whole world
The whole
which I
world
saw.
building is immense, right?
Now, how can you remember all this stuff? I started having a textbook, starting to write some of that. It's impossible. And after a while, you forget who it was, and everything. So what I found out is that I got a database, an Access database, Microsoft Access database, and
Yep.
then I started putting these names in there. So now it's a breeze. I just
Yeah.
punch this name, or I say, according to this book, give me all the characters and all the information that's in there. Uh, it was impossible for me. I saw it up to one point. I said, I cannot remember what I've written.
Yeah.
So I have
I
to
mean
do this.
that's probably, I would say that's probably the biggest thing about fantasy in general is that world building part of it, because like you said, you have to create everything, right? You have to
Mm,
create, like you said, what type of vehicles are being used. You have to create all the characters because it is a whole world you're doing that nobody knows, right? So you have to build this out. And as much as I love, I would say sci-fi and fantasy, and I love it just as much as I love horror. I don't know if I'll ever do it because of all of that work that needs to be done in the world building. Not because I am afraid to do it or I don't want to put the work into it. Is I really enjoy the in and out portion of the storytelling, right? Most of my books are all standalones because I love getting in that story, getting you through the story, and giving you the finish, right? There is no cliffhanger really for the most part to go to another book. I want you to be able to get in there, read the whole thing, and you know that whole story from start to finish. But that's just what I like because again, you do what you want to read, and I kind of appreciate getting that one of kind of thing, or at least it being a complete standalone thing when it is complete, right? So I have written a book two for my werewolf book, but the book one is a standalone book, right? It is its own thing that is pretty much complete, and book two is pretty much its own thing. It references and has some of the characters, but it's also its own kind of standalone story with a connection, right? And that's just how I approach it. So for me, I would say it may be difficult for me to stay in that mindset to do a big sci-fi or fantasy as much as I love it because I'm too much onto the next story, right? I have I have too many ideas, or I always like to say voices in my head going on at one time that it'd be hard for me to stay in those characters where I'm writing horror and then I'm already thinking of the next monster or character to go at, and then as I'm even thinking about that one, I'm probably even thinking about the third one and like, oh, I'd love to do this too. So I think it'd be very difficult for me to stay in that mindset to do a longer sci-fi or fantasy as much as I love it. But maybe I'll try it one day. So I do always appreciate everybody that does write in that genre, like you and a lot of the other ones. The dedication you have to put to be able to build that entire world, and like you're saying, have to actually build yourself a database to go back to remember. Oh wait, that's right. There's another four characters I had in there that technically you're still around. I got to give them something to do, or at least explain why they're not around. So I always appreciate that because I know how much work gets put into that.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, for example, I have a wooden board which I have put in the names of the dates, what's happening, what day, and then I transfer this to an Excel file, so to be able to change it at will, what is happening and all of that. So it has, you must be very organized,
Yeah.
because if you do one thing today, you must be able to remember it tomorrow. And of course, we have the other, if I may say, peril here, that as you are writing one book, I mean, this happened to me. As you are writing one book, you have certain ideas that spawn up that are
Yep.
completely different.
Yep.
So, for example, I got some ideas, and then I like to write them. I stop this, I start writing the other one,
Yep.
just bring it to a point, and then I have to go back and remember the other thing. And if you don't have all this organization, there's no way you can catch up very quickly. I mean, it's going to be
Yeah.
very tedious. But if you have all this stuff, it's very easy to pick it up again.
Yeah.
Uh,
I mean, I
I
find myself sometimes writing three books at once. I really,
Yeah, same.
sometimes I hop back and forth, and it works for me. I wouldn't suggest it for everybody, but it's a good technique for me because it keeps it fresh always for me, right? It keeps it because my genres are so completely different from one another that it's a good refresh for me to hop between them, right? To hop between something that's completely horror, and then I may be two chapters in, put that aside, and start writing a children's book, right, which is completely different. And I may
Yeah,
put that aside, go back to the horror, and then I may put that aside and go to the dark romance, more the erotic horror. So my mind sometimes is all over the place, but it's a good refresh to keep everything new, right? It's a good way to kind of get yourself always in the motion, and then be able to hit that story with your full attention because I've kind of let that outlet go for the other couple of books. So it's always worked for me, but again, it's not something I'd probably suggest for anybody to try unless because you always want to do what's comfortable for you, right? So it's probably not the best suggestion for somebody to try writing yet.
yeah. I mean, what I do is that I dedicate a textbook in the new idea. So I have something on paper, so I can write something on paper, and I create a different subdirectory on the computer, and I put all the information that I feel about all in all there. And if I bring it to a point that I say I cannot write this anymore, I have to go back to the other thing. It stays there. It's ready
Yeah.
to be picked up when the other finishes.
But do you feel it's a good refresh for you, a reset when you do switch back and forth because it kind of lets you
It's
recharge a little
fun.
bit by going to a different storyline, different story.
Yeah, I have to do that. I have to do that for
Yeah,
my brain to normalize.
yeah,
Because if you try to write one thing, um, maybe for example, Douglas Adams, for example, which I admire and I love his writing, and I have written a first part which is in his style, which is again in $1 in under the Texas Novas in on Amazon. If we were Douglas Adams, that he has to write one book and finish it and give it to the publisher, and as you remember, his publisher locked him up for 3 weeks in a hotel room and told him you gotta finish part two or part three because you gotta have it. There are people
yep,
wanting to buy the book, so we're locking you in. You can't get out until you finish the book, and you have to write this one book. I can't do that. I would say I can't do that.
Yeah.
Right? I have to rest by writing something else for a while and then come back to it. I think it's a better quality
Yeah.
because your mind
It
is
is
very
a really good reset, right? It's a good reset for your creativity. It's a good reset for your mind. It's a good reset really for the focus because you got to sometimes take yourself out of that, right? I mean, one of the things, when you're at work or doing something, anything, right? Whether it's spreadsheets or whatever, the longer you look at it, the more you look at it, you don't see anything different anymore, right? You go, I can't find the problem, and it always takes that second set of eyes to go, oh, it's right here, because you just keep seeing it, right? And it's that little reset, whether it's just writing a simple scene that's different, or just jotting some stuff down or whatever. I think it's always that little reset that really helps. It just like really refreshes everything and lets you really just go back into it.
definitely. You cannot have it otherwise. Uh, After all, we are doing this, for our pleasure as well. So
Hmm.
we want to get something out of it as well. And also, I think it's the a more efficient way to be able to enhance the initial manuscript and to be able to give it more depth and be able to destroy any author blocks or writer blocks or
Yeah,
plot holes or all that because you have rested.
yeah.
And as far as I'm concerned, I there's a lot going on about writing when I dream. I have many times I wake up and in my dream I have solved this what's going to happen next. And then when I do that, because I cannot remember my dreams, I grab my phone and I start on the MP3 recorder
Hmm.
and I record anything that I remember. I record it, and sometimes I said to myself, "Come on, man, you can remember this.
Yeah.
It's not a problem. You remember it now. You can remember it later. I cannot remember it 10 minutes after.
That's
And if I
that's the way
have
it
it,
happens. It's interesting because there's a lot of authors when I've talked to on this podcast. A lot of them, just like you say, a lot of these stories or sometimes the fix they needed comes in a dream, right? It came to them and it just kind of hits you, um, and it's always very interesting. I mean, it's weird for all the weird stuff I write, right? All the just strange, unhinged stuff that I write sometimes. I never dream. I just don't. It just doesn't happen. I don't remember anything when I wake up. I was like, it's always like I've gone to sleep and wake up in the morning. I was like nothing, right? I got nothing, no notes, nothing to take. It's always the weirdest thing because I appreciate when all you and other authors are like, yeah, I had this dream and it became my whole story and it went this way. I was like, and it never happens for me, right? I wind up waking up like, oh, it's morning, got to go to work, right? It's very interesting that you know a lot of indie authors do have that creative outlet in their dreams that really comes to them and helps them in their storytelling.
it's I may have had that because when I was young, I was studying electrical engineering VLSI. You know how the circuits connect together. And this is the first time that I had this. I was because it was a very difficult subject. How chips are getting routed inside. You know how the processor is inside, not
Uh-huh.
just how the cables are connected outside the motherboard. How inside the CPU is all these wafers and all this stuff. I found that I was singing in my dream, and I said, "That's a nightmare thing. That's a nightmare thing to study." And this is how it started.
It's continued on after that. For everybody that's watching, like again, I want to mention this is a TikTok live version of my podcast called Between Authors. Generally, after this, I will download this and then I load it up to my YouTube podcast. I will post that when I load it up. So if you missed any of this or if you did not join at all, you can always go back and watch this. And on my YouTube, I probably have 75 or 80 interviews of authors on there, all different authors, different genres. So you can go and see, find some authors maybe you've never heard of, which is really why I did this, right? As you, the more that you're in the book community, right, and the more you meet, talk to indie authors, one of the things you really realize is how talented all these indie authors are, and unfortunately how many people don't know about their work, right? And again, I don't have an enormous following on YouTube or on here, but if there's somebody, if a couple eyes can find a new author that maybe they've never seen before, and these authors can find a couple more readers, I'm happy, right? That's really all I want to do, is try to get some more eyes on their work and really support as many as I can on this side. I appreciate you again, Ted, for coming on. For those that don't know, Ted's in Greece, and right now is 4:15 in the morning for him.
Yeah.
So he got up very early to be able to do this interview. I truly appreciate it. Like I said, I love talking to you about the old sci-fi and all the shows and everything. Just love going over that stuff. But is there anything else you want to kind of let the viewers know about maybe upcoming things you have, or anything else that you're working on?
Yeah. First of all, I'd like to say that it's my pleasure, Adrian, to talk to you. I really enjoy it. Our discussion is very constructive, and I admire your work very much
Thank you.
with the werewolf themes and all of that. I love it. It's very nice. Uh, just simply trying to write, as I said, the fourth part, which should be three sentences. But
Now 300. Now it's 300 pages.
now, no, now it's going to be estimated to be something like, I mean, it's 176 without the real beef inside. So, um, and there was another way why I elongated so much, because in the first version, uh, the guy that they were after escapes, so he has something like an 8 hours or 10 hours ahead of them, you know. And I said, if I write this, it's going to be like these guys were in a spaceship traveling for 10 hours, which doesn't have conflict, which doesn't have, suspense, which doesn't have everything. So I said, hold
he's
on.
he's taking a nap, right? He's catching up to
Yeah,
sleep.
yeah. Instead of taking a nap, now it's very strange to say that because I think you've read it. Instead of taking a nap, I have them wake up after only 5 hours of sleep because something is happening and they have to go somewhere else. So they give this guy this 8 hours, this 10 hours head start that he has. It's going to be longer, but they will be able to catch him up, right? But
Yeah,
they have to do something else first. So this filled this gap. This filled this gap because it's I think not us as writers and not readers want to have long times without action because it drags
yeah,
the book. So you gotta be able to either fill in this space with enough stuff that is going to make the reader say, okay, okay, they took 6 hours to chase to to grab this guy, but I am compensated because of the thing that happened before. So you gotta think about. I think you gotta think about that. The time drags, time lags in the
yeah.
story. Be able to have conflict, multi-domain conflict, and you gotta have high stakes and difficult goal. You gotta have smart antagonists. You have to treat your antagonists as if they were a much superior intellect protagonist.
Yeah, correct.
And also the protagonist should not win by luck or ex deus machina. The protagonist should not win or survive just because you said in the cover of the book that this is a protagonist. And the
Correct.
antagonist is a person by itself. So
Yeah.
he has a different goal which is different than yours. And it's a battle of wits, it's a battle of technologies, it's a battle of okay, you cannot say that luck cannot play a role, right?
Hmm.
You cannot say that because life and books and the stories that we write are not chess. In chess, if you make a mistake and the antagonist, and the other player sees it, it's very difficult to go back, right? But as we write a book, I think we are playing a chess with dice. Right? For example, the rule that I follow in my protagonist is that they are cornered, and the next move they are checkmated, but they are allowed to have a throw of dice. Right? They are allowed to have a throw of dice. Why? Because they have created the specific requirements to be able to have that. It's not just luck. It's not just
Yeah.
a die. They have
Yeah.
created it. It's like you are cornered in the edge of the chessboard, and there is another square that you can go to. So instead of mating one, you have an escape route because you created it. You
Yeah.
created.
I've always, I kind of like in my stories, I don't like anybody to be safe, right? Like you said, it doesn't matter if their name's the main character, if everybody loves them, you know, if my story says that, sorry, that person's got to go, they're going to go. And, I really, I've always been influenced by Japanese cinema. And anybody that watches Japanese cinema knows there's very few happy endings in most of their movies. It's always, even when, say, somebody wins, they've lost, right? There's always something that really is depressing at the end of a Japanese movie, and they're beautiful movies, but I kind of always have liked that, right? So a lot of times I don't really want a happy ending in my book, so it's very few times you'll see a real happy ending. Like I said, they may win, but they still lost somehow. Something still happened that they suffered, right? And again, it's my upbringing and the stuff I've loved that I just like bringing into that. I have always appreciated that no real happy ending kind of thing, and everybody's kind of suffered on the way through the story. It's just something I've always loved as I write it.
Yeah, I think it's that's like a monkey's paw, right?
Yeah,
Which you have this magic thing, and you say if you rub it, your wish is going to come true, but you will have to suffer something. Uh,
yep,
but there will be some suffering right after that.
yeah. That's
Uh,
it. It's my monkey paw technique is what is what I like to do. Again, I want to thank everybody who's tuned in today to watch, and definitely follow Ted. Check out his work. Like I said, he's got the three first parts of the book up. Book one and book two are both for $1, an ebook version. Book three is for $3 right now, and he's writing book four at the moment. Definitely check him out. Check out his work. His work's amazing, and give him a follow. Start checking, see what he's doing out there. And I appreciate everybody for tuning in. Again, I appreciate you, Ted, for getting up at 3 in the morning to do this, or maybe just staying up and waiting for it to happen. Definitely go get some sleep now. Go catch up on it, and as soon as I load this up, I'll send you a message so
Yeah,
you know
sure.
when it's up on YouTube.
I'll send you all the details as well, all the
Perfect.
details and all the links. I'll send them to you. It's not a problem. And thank you very much for having me in your show. Thank you, Adrian.
Absolutely.
I enjoy very much talking to you. I think your
Yeah.
work is
So
great.
so do I. Anytime you want to come back again, I absolutely love chatting with you. Like I said, because we go over some of the things that we truly appreciate together. But I always love talking books, talking writing, talking with other indie authors. I just truly enjoy it, right? I enjoy the process. I enjoy the reasons we do it. I enjoy what's led us to do it. I enjoy the struggles we have, doing it. It's always a beautiful thing to talk to other indie authors about what this means for us and for everybody else that does it.
Thank you very much, Adrian.
You're welcome. And if any other indie authors watch this on the YouTube podcast or watching today, there is a sign up form in my link tree if anybody wants to be interviewed on this. And like I say, I do it live. I'll download it and then I'll load it up on the YouTube podcast. And you're free to share it, cut it up, use little pieces of the interview, anything you'd like to help your marketing, for your books and stuff. Thank you, everybody that watched, and have a good one, Ted. It was a pleasure talking to you again.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure too, Adrian. Thank you very much.
No worries. Talk to you later. Bye.